Some souls arrive gently, cradled by warmth, but others are born into fire. They are born into homes where silence cut sharper than insults, into families where affection had strings and love must be earned. If that's you, if you've always walked across oceans for other people while your own pain went unnoticed, if you were taught your sensitivity was the flaw and your family's disorder was your fault, here's the message you've been waiting to hear. You're not defective. You are not a mistake. You are appointed. Consider this. The home that could not meet you may have been the threshold that initiated you. Perhaps your gifts did not emerge in spite of what happened there, but because of it. Stay with me. By the end, you'll see why your path chose you, how the deepest wound becomes the door to your power, and why you were never the broken limb on the family tree. You were the root system restarting. This isn't only about repair. It's about recognizing you as the cycle breaker your lineage kept postponing. If you've lived as the burden, the black sheep, the problem, the one who wouldn't fit the family script, this is for you. It's time to name why you're here. Let's dive in. I'll be blunt. I used to see my background as a disadvantage. I believed that if I'd had normal, if I weren't the one who made waves, if I weren't exquisitely sensitive, I'd be further ahead, steadier, more acceptable. That story sounds familiar to a lot of intuitives and empaths. We're told, healthy homes make healthy people, unhealthy homes make damaged ones. So we spend years trying to sand ourselves down, heal it, overcome it, forgive it, forget it. But that overlooks a critical truth. What if that household wasn't just harm to escape? What if it was initiation into depth? Carl Jung saw it repeatedly. Those capable of the most profound growth, the widest compassion, the clearest spiritual sight, very often come from the most difficult beginnings. Scan the lives of true emotional elders, real healers, honest teachers. How many were raised in spotless harmony? Very few. The shame script keeps gifted people busy fixing themselves instead of realizing their abnormal upbringing, trained capacities no ordinary comfort could. Here's another reframe. Many black sheep weren't rejected because they were broken. They were rejected because they perceived what everyone else needed hidden. Enter the family-designated problem. In disordered systems, pressure needs a target. The group offloads denial onto one person. It's rarely the weakest who gets tagged. It's often the most sensitive, the most honest, the most attuned. Someone must register the pain. Someone must react when lines are crossed. Someone becomes the alarm. If you were labeled too much, too emotional, dramatic, when you were naming what was real, understand this. You weren't the malfunction. You were the signal. Your reactivity in a sick environment was evidence of health. Jung called the lifelong task individuation, separating from the collective trance to become authentically yourself. And here's the twist. Exile often catalyzes it. The family's attempt to shove you back into the role created the conditions that freed you from it. That doesn't erase the pain, but it does redefine it as passage, not punishment. Look at the people with real empathy, not appeasement, real intuition, not anxiety, real wisdom, not cleverness. Count how many were the different one who had to find another way. Every time your truth got dismissed, your allegiance to truth grew stronger. Every time reality was denied, you learned to trust your inner instrument. You weren't meant to fit the original mold. You were meant to outgrow it, outlearn it, and, when necessary, outdistance it. The very sensitivity they condemned is the receipt that you're succeeding. We're building to something. Recognizing yourself as the system's truth sensor is only the foundation. Next, we'll turn the wound into fuel. So yes, your childhood functioned as initiation. But here's where most people get stuck. You feel everything. You notice what others miss. You're chosen, but the body still knows fear. Chosen doesn't make anxiety evaporate. Most people try to return to normal. Process it, do some therapy, make peace, go back to baseline. Stability is a fine wish, but it's the wrong aim for this path. You aren't here to be average, you're here to be accurate. Jung's answer is shadow work, not deleting darkness, but integrating it. The parts you were told to bury, the anger, the grief, the intensity, aren't defects to suppress. They're power sources to wire correctly. Think how much life force you've spent dimming. The apologies for feeling, the self-edits, so others stayed comfortable. That's why so many gifted empaths stay small. They burn their energy, shrinking instead of channeling. Here's a different approach. Stop trying to be less. Learn to drive what you actually are. Here's the real map. It begins with recognition. You start noticing which feelings are actually yours and which were handed to you by the system. The dread that arrives without context, the shame that doesn't match an event, those aren't organic, they're inherited. When you can name whose weight you've been carrying, you begin separating yourself from their debris. Then comes integration, not throwing emotions away, but repurposing them. Anger isn't danger, it becomes the engine of boundaries. Sensitivity isn't fragility, it sharpens into precision perception. This is what trauma researchers call post-traumatic growth. Not returning to who you were before, but moving into abilities that only fire could forge. And finally, alchemy. The moment intensity finds direction, your experience turns into instruction. The very patterns you refuse to repeat become the maps that help others find their way. Because here's the truth. People who've never walked through flame can't guide anyone out of it. Your scars were never liabilities. They've always been your credentials. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. This isn't hypothetical. Research consistently finds growth domains after adversity, deeper connection, inner strength, gratitude for life, expanded possibilities, and spiritual development. In other words, the very gifts we talk about. And you're already doing the work every time you feel instead of numb. Choose presence over performance and refuse to pass down what you received. The difference now is you know what you're doing and why. Next, the mission widens, from personal integration to ancestral repair. Let's unpack that now. Here's the larger frame. Personal healing is the warm-up. What changes in your travels? Patterns don't start or stop at one generation. When prior wounds went unprocessed, their echo moves forward, sometimes right into you. We now have language for this, how stress responses and protective adaptations can echo across time. Translation: the weight you felt may not have been solely yours. No wonder the task seemed larger than your life. But that doesn't make you doomed. It makes you pivotal. Jung's lens, the collective unconscious, suggests we inherit not just pain, but archetypal pathways to mend it. The same line that delivers the wound can deliver the medicine. If you were tapped as the family's truth sensor, it's because you carry the psychology to metabolize what others could only transmit. Start by reinterpreting repetition. When you catch yourself reenacting an old family pattern, don't collapse into self-attack. Instead, ask, how far back does this run? And what is it asking to be learned now? You're not failing. You're specializing in generational work. Then comes the choice of consciousness, again and again. Every moment you respond instead of react, every boundary that interrupts an old loop, you're rewriting the family code for those who come after, while honoring those who came before. And at the core of it all is the work of the alchemist. You're not here to convince them or repair anyone else. You're here to change the substance itself, turning lead into gold by refusing to pass harm forward. Boundary by boundary, choice by choice. Because if the imprint of trauma can travel, so can the imprint of repair. The awareness you build, the compassion you extend to yourself, the patterns you break. These are not small. They ripple far beyond you. You may feel the weight of that responsibility. In truth, you've been carrying it all along. The difference now is that you know its name and its purpose. You weren't the misfit who couldn't conform. You were the one strong enough to carry what others disowned, and clear-sighted enough to transform it. If you were born into fire but are done carrying what isn't yours, write this in the comments. The pattern ends with me. Your gifts are not consolation prizes for a hard start. They're the tools required for your assignment. This is why so many empaths rise from difficult families, not despite those beginnings, but through them. You are becoming exactly who you were meant to be, doing what only you could do. Before you go, sit with this. Which pattern are you already interrupting that those before you could not, and who might breathe easier because you chose to?